Hello everybody, and welcome to Coproduce Care. So tonight, my name is Sophie Chester-Glynn, for anyone who doesn't know, and tonight I've got a fantastic guest with me. It's Deputy Mayor, Councillor Craig, and absolutely excited to have her join me. So I will introduce her in 2 seconds. I just want to have a bit of a disclaimer that I managed to get a text this morning and that the internet in my whole area is very, very iffy. So we're hoping that this broadcast will be successful and that we'll have some great content to talk with Asher Craig about who she is, what she does, and about the council and the great things they're doing and the challenges for social care in this difficult time of COVID-19. So do bear with us, and by all means, do put comments in the comment section if you can't hear us, if you can't see us very well. But tech aside, if you have questions or comments or anything you want to talk about, then please do comment in the comment section. And we really want as many people to see and hear from Asher as possible. So forward this link to your friends, tell them that it's happening, forward it on Twitter, LinkedIn, anywhere that you're around on social media. And do feel free to tell them that's going on. And of course, like and subscribe as always. That will also bring people to this live stream. And for anyone who doesn't know, Coproduce Care, we're an organisation made up of volunteers and people who work in social care. And the whole aim is to open up the care debate, talk about what's going on. Very relevant, obviously, COVID-19. Health and social care is in the news all the time, everywhere. But today, a bit more relaxed. It's the beginning of the bank holiday. Yes, we want to talk about what's going on around COVID and what's going on in Bristol, but also some of the great support and things that are going on as well. So feel free to join the debate, ask questions. But without further delay, and fingers crossed that the tech is good for us, I'm going to introduce Asher. Hello, Asher. How are you today?
I'm absolutely fine. It's been a long day. My final kind of Zoom online meeting of the day, but like you said, far more relaxed, much more chilled. So yeah, ready for this.
Lovely. And you know what? It's just been, like you say, one Zoom call after another Zoom call after. I feel almost like every day has been a day of work, and there's been no weekends, and there's Easter was cancelled, and whoo.
What weekends? I don't know. I'm working 25/8.
Oh, bless you, bless you. So, you know, obviously I know you, but there may be a few people who are new to you.
Sure. So I'm quite happy to kind of give you an overview, who I am, what we've been up to. And then when you're ready, I'm going to talk to you about what Bristol City Council has been doing to provide support to the care world, the adult social care world.
That would be lovely. That would be really nice. I'm just going to check. You sound a little bit quiet to me on the volume. So I've not heard any comments to say that people can't hear you. So it might just be me. But anyone who's watching, if you do need any volume changes, do say. But yeah, that's fine, Asher. Yeah, do give us an intro. I'd love to know also, like, what's your connection with Bristol? Are you from Bristol?
Yes, of course.
How did you get to your position? Let's go right back.
Oh my God, you're really going right back. Okay. So I always tell everybody I'm an accidental politician. I surprise myself every day that I'm even where I am. So I'm born and bred in Bristol. My parents are from the Windrush generation. In fact, for those of you who are online and I'm from Bristol, my actual stomping ground is Redland. That's where I was born. That's where I was brought up. That's where I went to school. So I know this city like the back of my hands. I'm completely invested. So everything that I do is driven by passion and the need to kind of make a difference. And I suppose I started my journey as a young community activist. And actually, I was reminded following the 40-year anniversary of the St. Paul's riots, but that was technically where my journey began. I was much younger, and I was much angrier. And, you know, we, as you know, in the community of St. Paul's 40 years ago, we had the St. Paul's uprising, or the riots, as everybody knows. And, you know, it was really the Black community saying enough is enough. We were being targeted by the police for educational outcomes. In fact, it actually has felt over the last 30 years that we're just going around on a mouse wheel. You know, you want things to change, but nothing is really changing. And I always felt when I was much younger that if we were going to make a difference to the way the city was run, the way the city was embracing or not embracing different communities who were more vulnerable and disadvantaged, then I had to kind of get stuck in. So I became a community activist. Like my first interface with the local authority was as a young 19-year-old, very angry, very upset at how the council was carving up funds that had been made available to the city of St. Paul's following the riots. But interestingly enough, nobody was representing St. Paul's around the table where the decisions of how money was being made. And I caught wind of all these decisions that were being had. And I wasn't representing an organization. I just had this kind of powerful urge that somebody needed to do something. And I marched myself off to City Hall, or the council house as it was then known. I burst into this meeting, which was completely packed of all these officers, councillors from all over the city, but there was no one who looked like me anywhere in the room. Yet the money that had been made available by government to address the concerns that the community had been raising, no one from the community was actually in that room. And there my journey began. So I'm not going to go into all of that history, but I have made my mark here in the city, both in the Black voluntary and community sector, but I've also worked in the public sector. I've worked nationally. I've worked for the Home Office, been there, done that, worn the T-shirt, and worked at national level. So I've worked across the whole of the UK, and always the backdrop for everything that I've done is about making a difference to the lives of people who have no voice in society. So I was never interested in becoming a councillor. You can imagine I was a young little whippersnapper. And actually councillors and any politicians, anybody in power used to annoy me because they never answered a question straight. So the one thing...
Has anything changed apart from you?
Yeah, there are those who are extremely diplomatic, but I always shoot from the hip. My children tell me I have no filter, but I think one of the things that I respect more so from politicians is if you do give it to people straight. You know, I'm not going to, you know, I'm just an ordinary member of the public, just like everybody else. I've been given this opportunity. Well, I've not been given because I had to work for it and stomp the streets and knock on people's doors to become a councillor. And so in 2016, so just to kind of give you an update, how did I become a poacher turned gamekeeper? I was minding my own business. And about 2 months before the election in 2016, a friend of mine emailed me and asked me if I would consider standing for council. And I actually deleted the email. I didn't even respond. I was really actually quite rude. I have apologized to her about it. Yeah. Yeah. And then about 3-4 days later, I got another email saying, "Oh, Asher, we really would like you to think about, you know, kind of stepping up and going for this." And I have to say, for somebody like myself who is all about making a difference, particularly, as I said, in ensuring that the voice of those who had no voice in the city, there weren't people who looked like me and or you in positions of power in this city. And so Marvin was running, our mayor, Marvin Rees was running. And actually Marvin used to work for me many years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Indirectly, I was chair of the Black Development Agency, which was an organisation that I founded back in 1999, and it was the kind of infrastructure organisation for Black, Asian, minority ethnic groups in the city. And we actually went on to win plaudits from government, Home Office, and others in the way in which we were a very professionally run outfit, but providing support to BAME communities and voluntary and community sector groups across the city. So Marvin used to work for the BDA back in the day, I think just before he joined the BBC. So he worked for us in comms. But we were like passing ships in the night, because when he joined, I was kind of on my way out, because I was working in London. So for a stint of my working life, I was commuting every day for 5 years between Bristol and London to work in a senior post. As I said, I worked in a Home Office and I worked for another national charity. Kicking off there too.
Amazing. I mean, there's just so much to your CV. It must just run on for pages and pages and pages. I didn't realise you've done so much.
Oh, that's only a tip of the iceberg.
Wow. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a tech check. I'm making funny noises every time I talk.
You are actually. I can hear you though.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm not going to talk too much, which is probably a good thing. Safe to say, you were quiet. I think you're not as quiet anymore, but maybe if you could come slightly closer, just for so people can hear you a bit better, or just speak a little bit up. I mean, I can hear you fine.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, okay. I can hear you good. Really.
Okay, great. Now you're breaking up, Sophie. Hi, Sophie.
And I've come out.
Hi. You're kind of breaking up.
Again.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm back again. Okay, let's see how we go. So I love the commitment. It's like the commitment to justice, to improve the situation of people who are disadvantaged in any way, who aren't represented. That representation, so important. And
I think one of the things that I will say, so one of the things that used to really, really frustrate me, and it's something that we were determined to kind of flip on its head when we were elected in 2016, is if you look at all of the consultations over the years that have happened, that have been run by the local authority, there is a pattern that always exists, is in that those who have more social capital, those who have the time and the energy, those who are much older and or retired, have the time to engage with democracy here in the city. And it's those most disadvantaged communities, those in Avonmouth, Lawrence Weston, Hartcliffe, in fact, all of the areas that everybody in the city recognises that as the most deprived wards and the most disadvantaged wards when it comes to education, health inequalities, employment opportunities. It's always those communities who you hardly have any input into how this city is shaped. And so when we were elected in 2016, the mayor has made no apology for ensuring that tackling inequalities in this city is a fundamental rockbed of everything that we do. And please, I always say to people, don't get it twisted. I may be Black, he may be Black, and I am proud of who I am and who I represent, but I can do all equalities, intersectionality. Like I said, I'm fighting for those who have no voice, and that doesn't mean that I'm just stuck on one wheel in terms of race inequality. I can look at it from across the whole protected characteristics and then none. So I just wanted to clarify that point, because I
love that.
Yeah, I think people are always quick to just, you know, I'll walk in a room or I'll stand on a podium and people think when I'm going to talk about equalities, all I can talk about is race. Well, race is my go-to. That's my background. That's who I am. But I can apply everything that I have done over the years and have worked in broader areas. I've worked in childcare, I've worked in training, I've worked in advocacy, I've worked for the local authority, I've worked in education. So I have a good grasp and knowledge of how now even more so how this city runs and ticks.
Absolutely. And I suppose when you're talking about all the things and your passions that you've had, it's been nearly 4 years now.
Yes.
What would you say is some of the things, sticking to that theme of inequality, whatever that might be, whether it's LGBTQ plus or whether it's gender inequality or whether it is to do with race and colour, what are the things that you feel that you're most proud of?
I think one of the so one of the first things that I was really clear on, so I will talk just for race specifically, but then I'm going to gravitate. So when we arrived, we had a number of equality groups in the city that were being funded by the local authority. And for many of you, when we arrived in 2016, the council had a £30 million hole in the budget. And so we, as a Labour administration, had to make some really tough decisions about how we were going to balance the book. Because what we weren't going to do is have government come in and take us over, as they have done a number of local authorities over the years. If you're unable to balance your budget, they'll just come in and chop left, right, and centre, and they won't be consulting with anybody. So we took some really difficult decisions, and I think one of the things I'm really proud of is our Stepping Up Leadership programme that I brought in, because again, as you heard me say, all those years ago, 30 years ago, it was kind of like the leadership landscape did not represent the diversity of the city. And then rolled back to 2016, the city still, in terms of where Black, Asian and minority ethnic people were in the city, our skills and were kind of just people weren't rising in the city. And if you needed to rise or step into a leadership role, many people had to just leave the city. So we designed a Stepping Up program, which is a leadership program. I'm exceptionally proud of that, because when we started it in 2016, I had no idea the impact that was going to make 3 years on. So we designed it in 2016. The first cohort started in January 2018. We were only going to recruit 25 people. We ended up recruiting in the first year 57 people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, and nearly 90% of them have all gone on to kind of step up into leadership roles. And that's not necessarily within their own organizations, but they stepped up as school governors, they've become magistrates, they're trustees on boards. We've got some NHS non-exec members who've come out of that. And we concentrated on Black, Asian and minority ethnic because that was where the data, you got to go where the data is telling you the issues are in your organization. The data doesn't lie. Okay. So, and everybody agreed, the private sector, the public sector. We have a group where the public sector, we did drag some of them kicking and screaming, but they now quite happily publish their yearly data on our version of a race disparity unit to look at where people are in the organization. So we started with 57. The following year, we broadened the scheme from BAME to disabled, LGBT and women. We recruited, I think it was 49 that year. And this year, we've just kicked off the cohort last week. We did the induction, and obviously it's now online, so we had to scramble really quickly. And we now have nearly 50 people. So in total, we have had nearly 200 people through the leadership program from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, women, LGBT and disabled employees, and from across the whole city. And then this year, we've actually gone into Bath and North East Somerset, North Somerset, and South Gloucestershire as well. So that scheme isn't
So that scheme isn't actually dedicated to just Bristol. It's across everywhere. So you've actually started something that applies to pretty much, you know, anyone, anywhere. So that's cute. That started as a nucleus in Bristol. You've just spread it out. That's incredible.
Yeah, that was always the intention, and the Home Office has lauded the work that we're doing around stepping up, and so other local authorities and the cities are really keen on taking what we've had. We've won prizes. I think we've won at least 5 awards so far, and we were up for local authority before all of this COVID happened. Bristol was actually up for the biggest prize you can get in local authorities, and we were up for local Council of the Year, but
yeah,
we were up for 5 awards, and one of them was around our Stepping Up program. So if we win that,
amazing.
That will be maybe the sixth award that we've had in terms of looking at best practice and how that's been able to potentially replicate. So that's just one, but they're just so. The problem that I have is that as Deputy Mayor, I have quite a wide portfolio in terms of the communities, equalities, and public health, and then I cut across all the other portfolios, including the mayor. So I kind of interfere in everybody.
You're just in everything. Like, do you sleep? Do you eat? I mean, are there 2 of you?
No, people do ask me where I do get the energy from, but as I said, I'm really passionate. I love my city. I love everything there is about the city, and even at this really difficult moment in time, I love the city even more because I have been totally moved by the generosity of spirit and the way in which the citizens of Bristol have just wrapped. I just want to wrap my arms around the city and say thank you for rising up to the challenge and showing quite clearly that people do care. And through this COVID, through this what is a once in a lifetime crisis, because it even beats Spanish flu now.
I know. I'm going to go on to some of. I'm going to mute you. I need to mute you. You know your phone. Just tilt it a little bit so we can see more of you and less of your ceiling. There you are.
Okay, cool.
I'm going to mute you for a second and just show pop up a few things. But I know that you've actually, talking about some of the stuff, the great things that have been going on. I don't know if you see it. I've got here. This is Social Care Institute of Excellence. So they do a lot of training and they do a lot of advice for people in social care. And they have just said, they're national, and they've also recognised Bristol City Council as a case study for sustainable care, and this is all connected with the Green Capital and I think the One City plan, so that's something that we picked up, which was absolutely fantastic. And then you talked a bit about people just pulling together in Bristol, and I see it with so many different voluntary organisations with the community, and it all helps in social care, our effort. And I've got here a tweet that is a bit hazy, and you're just talking about Can Do Bristol, and we had a bit of a chat about that before. And I'm going to unmute you. Tell us a little bit about what Can Do Bristol is doing and the successes there.
Okay, so again, it's using my community development going into my community development toolkit. So this is a great thing about being a local councillor as well, and having the background that I have. So I'm able to apply community development principles to the way in which I work. I'm all about empowering other people to have their voices. I don't have to speak on behalf of you unless you want me to, but I will help and provide the tools to enable communities to really kind of step up and have their say. Sorry, I've just kind of lost my thread. What was it you were asking me?
I wanted to know more about Can Do Bristol, because we had it earlier.
So Can Do, again, 2016, Can Do was brought to me by one of our officers, and we were looking at how we could ramp up volunteering in the city. And we had the Can Do kind of website. It was soft launched over a year, but you know, we weren't being as proactive as we could have done, because when we were looking at it, it was kind of like during the first couple of years of, you know, trying to settle the organization, you know, in terms of our own fiscal responsibility. And then when the crisis hit, Marvin just said, right, Asher, Penny, we need to coordinate kind of volunteering around the city. And so we put the Can Do Bristol website to work. And all I can say is that within 72 hours of us putting it out there that we wanted people to sign up to help support people with the virus who were shielded or in self-isolation, we actually added, I think it's something like 3,000 people joined the website in the first 72 hours. And now our website, we have over 8,000 people signed up onto the Can Do website, and nearly 4,000 of those volunteers who have signed up indicated to us that that they would like to help with the COVID-19 efforts. So off the back of that, we have set up 22 community infrastructure hubs, kind of virtual hubs across the city that the volunteers can coalesce around. And through those hubs, we direct volunteers, you know, give them a call and say, can you go and do some shopping? This person needs their dog walk. Could you go and, you know, just, we've got people just making phone calls and giving people support, because a lot of people are self-isolated and all lonely. And yeah, it's just been absolutely phenomenal. So if any of you are on the calls and have signed up to Can Do Bristol, I just want to thank you so much. I know in the early days, people were really keen. We're expecting to kind of be ready and raring to go. But obviously, this is a long game, you know, so that the initial energy and the effort still remains, but things have kind of settled down now into a pattern. But I have to admit, I pat myself and everybody else in the city on the shoulder for the way in which we have risen to the challenge and exceptionally. And Bristol, like you said, is being touted by other colleagues that I know of really kind of stepping up and really addressing this face on. And I think having the one city plan and the one city approach, the city office, and the relationships that we forged with key partners across the city, just so when COVID kicked in and we set up the local resilience forum, everything just seemed to just work so smoothly. I mean, sometimes I felt like we were kind of sitting back for the first couple of weeks, and officers were just, you know, the structures that were in place, they really are working in terms of resilience and recovery.
I really feel that's kind of like a testament to, I mean, I'm Bristolian, born and bred, born in Southmead Hospital, so like it's great, but it just shows like how community efforts work, and how, you know, having a strong leadership that can say, right, come on everyone, we'll support you, let's go. Even being on here and saying thanks to people, it just makes such a difference to have that presence, rather than kind of locking yourself in a room, even though everybody's working. But it's nice for people to just come out and just say what they're doing. And I know with Can Do, I've actually asked them to come on one of our podcasts, or, you know, do one of these live streams, because we use somebody actually to edit some of our other videos, and she's doing a fantastic job. She's not working at the moment because she's not got any work, and she's like, okay, I'll come and help. And, you know, that might not be going out and doing stuff which other people are doing, but it's something that she can do from her home because she's not doing anything, and Can Do facilitates that. So I definitely want more people to hear about it, because you've got those 8,000 people who could potentially do so much. And, you know, it's just great to raise awareness, and it's great that it's got that support. So you talked a bit about the One City plan. I know there's loads of information about that on your website and everything like that, so that's really helpful. But also I noticed on Twitter that you're very supportive of, you know, when the government brought out the support for domestic abuse, and just, yeah, can you talk a little bit about that for anyone who might not know?
Yeah, so obviously during this time of lockdown, and this is heavily caveated what I'm about to say. So as part of my public health role, and as I said, I cut across many other directorates, but I'm directly responsible for commissioning domestic abuse services in the city. So I know that intimately. So we get a near enough a weekly update from both the police and our community safety team on what's happening around community safety, antisocial behaviour, etc. And so very early on in the lockdown, we were hearing cases nationally that, kind of phone lines, Women's Aid, etc., were receiving maybe spikes of up to 50-60% increase in the number of calls. And we had, I have to say that, so just in terms of the police and the reporting that we get, actually here in Bristol, it's kind of flatlined. We haven't seen that kind of peak, but the agencies, Missing Link and others who provide the domestic abuse services, they have actually seen an increase, though they've kind of moved many of their services online. There has been a slight spike. So what we have been doing is we've been meeting with, so the Police and Crime Commissioner, Sue Mount Stevenson, she is a real champion for domestic violence in the city. Our cabinet lead for women, Councillor Helen Godwin, she's kind of driving the work around domestic violence. And so what we have done is we've got these what we call COVID-19 cells, and they're kind of basically like our rapid response groups that we have. And some of us as cabinet members are part of that, kind of steering the officers. And so what we've done is we've made sure we're actually working on a new campaign to complement what the government's campaign on domestic violence, because we want to make sure that people who are experiencing domestic violence are very clear about the pathways of getting access to support and information. So in a few days from now, there'll be some more information coming out there. We've got some videos, we've got some stuff online, lots of resources. We have today just agreed we've found some additional funding to open another house. I think it's a 6-bedroom house to provide additional accommodation for any families who need to flee their homes. So we're increasing the amount of refuge space, but we're also looking again at the overall strategy around how we approach domestic violence and abuse. I think when domestic violence was first funded many years ago, the emphasis was on women and supporting women, but we're also having to look at, well, what about the perpetrator? That we've really not done a lot in terms of investing in services to also deal with the perpetrator. And also we haven't agreed the policy as yet, but I think many of my colleagues, and I too myself, I'm also keen on ensuring, well, why should the woman, if it's the woman, why should she have to leave the house with her children? And that is always the case. It's the woman having to flee with the family. And yeah, perpetrators kind of get off scot-free. So we want to flip the switch on that one. So again, watch this space, but we will be consulting on the strategy going forward. But it's not business as usual at the moment. But as I said, we've kind of stepped up kind of emergency support, and again, because of the unusual situation that we find ourselves in, we're also ensuring that there is no bump in the road in relation to the services that we're commissioning. So we're extending those commission services so they don't have to worry about, oh, I've got a bid again for more money, etc. I mean, we're in extraordinary times.
Absolutely. That's fantastic to hear. And I think, because I don't know whether it is because of this, but from hearing your passions and what you're interested in and your focus on inequalities and injustice, that perspective of thinking about what effect is that moving sort of the woman and her family out, that's actually an extra strain on them when people might have thought that's entirely positive because you're getting them away from the danger, but actually it's much, much more complex than that. So it's great to kind of hear you talking about those complexities. Now, I want to kind of get back to care a little bit. Now, I've literally been in back-to-back meetings all day. I have not listened to one bit of press. However, someone in my team has, and I will bring up a couple of clips. So this one is not so new, but it is talking about coronavirus and how it's going to be tracked by ethnicity. And what has been over the news a lot anyway before this is the fact that there are issues with non-white communities with that. But also what my colleague gave me was that Black Britons face twice the risk of death. And that's according to something that came out today from the ONS, the Office of National Statistics. I mean, what do you think of that?
Yeah, it's actually extremely frightening. And I have a lot of friends and colleagues who are actually quite frightened about what's happening. Some people are just too scared to even go into hospital because they actually feel that going into hospital is actually is more of a cause that they're more likely to be dying as opposed to kind of just staying at home. I mean, people are actually really, really scared. And obviously we know, we have the statistics. Here in Bristol, we know the statistics in terms of the number of Black, Asian and minority ethnic staff who work within the NHS. And as I said, we work with our public sector partners anyway. So we have that information in terms of where staff at, from the top to the bottom of the organisation, the pay structure and all of that. But obviously it is really complex, and it's too early to kind of say, well, what is really going on? But obviously people are pointing at underlying health conditions, certain communities more susceptible to things like, kind of diabetes and other things. So it really is too early. But I can tell you now, talking to my other councillor colleagues in other local authorities, and in some London boroughs, nearly over 70% of the people who have died in wards in London are from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. If you look at the number of NHS staff and workers who have died, I think at one point when they had just under 100, only of that 100, only one person was actually white, and the rest were all NHS staff. They were like doctors, nurses, kind of on the frontline workers. So yes, something is going on. And as I said before, tackling inequality is going to be fun. It has to be front and center to everything that we do. We can't go back to the old normal way in which we used to run our cities. We have to, and I think as we're working through recovery at this moment, we're moving communities from the margins to the mainstreams, particularly those who are feeling the weight of what's happening in COVID. Myself and Marvin asked for a kind of a rapid review. So we ourselves have done a rapid review and a quick research into what's going on in Bristol. As I said, the numbers may be low, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say that there isn't a pattern showing. I have the early indications of what that is showing, and unfortunately I can't say anything yet. I haven't even shared it with Marvin yet. I'm sorry, I haven't even shared it with the mayor yet.
I'll let you off.
No, but we hope to publish what's going on. We've gone into the granular details. So it's great that ONS are providing that information, because that information was missing. Remember, the only thing that we could ever say in terms of number of deaths that were happening on a day-to-day basis was breaking down by male and female, and that was it. Now I can tell you I can tell you ward by ward now where people are dying, where those deaths are COVID related. Obviously, we're doing comparisons with the data from last year. And I can tell you now, in some aspects over the last few weeks, there's been a doubling in the number of deaths that have happened here in Bristol compared to last year. And in some cases, 34% of the deaths that we had, I think, in the last couple of weeks were COVID related, of all the causes of deaths that we had. But we, as I said, we can break it down even more. And all I will say is people will be surprised, particularly here in Bristol. You will be surprised at the at what that data is actually showing us. But myself and the mayor are also working with global leaders as well on the issue of how we tackle endemic discrimination post-COVID. So I was chairing a meeting on last week Friday with a number of leaders, both globally, across the UK. Lord Simon Woolley was on the call with me. I had a couple of people from Washington talking about their experience in America. And so we are working collectively. So you've seen a lot of the organisation Charity So White, Runnymede Trust, Ubeli Foundation have all come out with data and information about the impact of COVID. And so what I've been able to do is coalesce everybody around, we're trying to have kind of one voice. Everybody still has many voices, but we all want to talk with one voice and be very clear about what our demands, what the demands are going to be about how we can't go back to business as usual, and what we expect from government, what we expect from city leaders, and what we expect from communities if we are going to change.
Thank you. Now, I love that kind of high level view and how you want to make that impact. Looking forward to how we're going to support our citizens or people living in the city, and being an example to others maybe. But also coming back to social care now, how do you feel? Like, there's a huge debate, and obviously it's very huge passion for me, is that social care is always left behind. And that's the next thing that we need to look at. So we'll be looking at what's happening out in the NHS, but social care is possibly the bridge between the NHS and the community. And obviously it's always been part of my life because I've grown up involved in social care, but it's interesting to see how it's so new to so many people, the general public, people working in health, and yet it's right at the front line. Nationally, what's your opinion on that? And also locally, do you feel like anything is going to change because of COVID?
So social care has always been the Cinderella service. We already know that the government has ignored the whole social care agenda. As local authorities, we have been knocking on the door of government for years and years. You will know, I think 49% of our overall council budget, that's £568 million every year, we spend on adult social care. That is the biggest budget that we have in the city, yet we actually, there is no kind of framework, there is no, kind of government legislation around social care. Why? Because government obviously finds it too difficult to deal with. Well, guess what? They have no choice but to deal with it. I was really slightly annoyed a couple of weeks ago when the Secretary of State came out with the kind of green badge and said, right, we want to recognise carers. It's great that you want to recognise carers, but a badge alone is not going to help the situation when the sector is crying out for kind of more resources, PPE. And I would actually say that I have still big concerns, because the other thing that we're going to find, as you saw, the deaths are starting, it's peaked and the deaths are going down within hospitals, but the deaths are actually still rising in care homes. And I've listened to a number of, I've got lots of friends, and I think what people need to understand as well, like yourself, Sophie, my mother worked in care when I was younger. When our parents came to this country, that's where they went, into the NHS or into care. So we've been at the front line forever, right? But it's never been recognised. So let's see what's going to happen. But in terms of Bristol, we made sure that we wanted to recognise social care. So our Health and Wellbeing Board, our cabinet lead for adult social care, last year, Marvin and I, we made the decision that instead of me stepping up and co-chairing the Health and Wellbeing Board, as I do lead on public health, we wanted to recognise and demonstrate quite clearly the importance of adult social care. And so we asked Councillor Holland to actually chair, because what we were saying is, we need to demonstrate to the city that we mean business, and we're putting health and care on the same footing. And as I said, we've done everything that we can in this crisis. So we've allocated, in the first tranche of money that we got from government, of the 1.6 billion that they made first available to councils, over £9 million of that we actually invested directly into kind of COVID-19 support for adult social care. So we've invested 9 million to build the resilience of the care sector. We want to ensure continuity of care to those already receiving it, as well as developing more capacity. We have made sure that we can also provide that additional resource will help the care homes provide more cover for frontline staff, including bringing in any agency staff that you have. We've made available nearly £750,000 of extra resources to other key organisations to support volunteers and existing capacity to ensure that people who are returning home safely are also in receipt of appropriate care. We've also we're giving care providers an additional £100 per week per Bristol funded residents to help with the temporary increase in any fees, to help residential nursing care providers with the additional costs caused by coronavirus, because obviously you were buying PPE equipment, masks, was it a pound a mask, and now they've gone up to something absolutely ridiculous, I've been hearing. So, 26 quid in some cases. It's just crazy what's going on. It feels sometimes, every time I get slightly angry, because every time I watch, I'm thinking, who is really making money out of this whole coronavirus?
Don't get me started.
Even the tracing and the tracking and the testing, that funding hasn't come into local authorities or the NHS. That money's gone to Deloitte, right? Deloitte, a private sector company who is setting up all of these tracking stations. And then there are big flaws in even the testing and the tracking, because the emphasis has been on the NHS, and I would say quite rightly so, but equally rightly, they should also, the government's biggest faux pas is not recognising and supporting the adult social care sector, because because the testing and tracing is only now just kicking in. One of the reasons why we're seeing the rise in deaths in care homes is because hospitals were releasing patients into care homes and they weren't being tested. So you wonder why that there is an increase in coronavirus when the homes, you have no idea that the people who are being who are coming into your care had already those underlying symptoms, and and obviously you're going to have breakouts because you don't know what you don't know. So it's all come too little, too late. So a perfect storm is now upon us.
I know. And one thing I would say is that it is really hard, and I don't really know what the solution is. I mean, this is what this live stream is for, is to speak to lots of different people and get the ideas there and get people thinking about it. Hopefully at some point we'll get a chance to vote on something around this. But I don't know whether this is possible, but I was thinking, in the call that I had on Wednesday with a group of providers, somebody mentioned that Wales is giving £500 to each care worker, so that, because a lot of people were saying, well, how is the extra money going straight to the front line? And I don't know whether in England the government can do that, because as care providers, we even considered, can we do that? And then we thought, whoa, hold on a minute, we don't have that money to do that. We'd love to do that. It needs to come from a national level. I mean, in terms of it's great that, you know, leaders like you and Marvin and people in local authority will start engaging with people on the ground in social care more, and engaging with them in the conversation and the leadership meetings that are happening, which is fantastic, because people get a real flavour of what the social care is all about. But also, is there a way that you can feed that up and feed those ideas and influence people higher up? I don't know, I don't know politics so well. Maybe that's more to do with MPs, but do you have any ideas on what you might ask for?
Yeah, of course. So again, you know, you're the ones who are on the front line. I always say to, you know, and the politicians we don't always have the answer. And that's why I have the brief that I have around communities, because we need to talk to the people who know, the people who are on the front line. You're the ones who are going to come up with the solutions. So even as we are already starting to look at recovery longer term for the city, because it's going to take us some time, because I'm going to drop a number on you now. Okay, so the worst case scenario for our local authority going forward, if the government does not bail us out for the money that we have expended through COVID, we're looking at a worst case scenario of £82 million hole in our budget. Okay, and the government is not prepared. Yeah, we're doing the maths. We don't, like I said, best case, worst case. Best case, 36 million. Worst case, 82 million. The fact that they've only made available 3.2 billion so far to local authorities, so even in the last tranche of funding that we got was actually less than the 13 million that we just got. So far we've only had like 26 million pounds to kind of help us through COVID. And so we are dipping into our own kind of reserves and finances to bridge that gap. That's unsustainable, not only for us, but other local authorities across the country. So Marvin is making representations through Core Cities in his role as mayor, through our MPs, because he meets with the MPs on a weekly basis. So we can use, so any issues that you have, you know, let me know, and I will feed it into the various different forums. But we also, I was on a call with the cabinet today, and I made a point of saying that going forward, we want to have the presence of care providers on our health and wellbeing board. So you actually have a voice directly on the Bristol Health and Wellbeing Board. So watch this space. We just need to work out who's going to represent you. But I know that you have an association locally, but you can decide how that's going to work. But, you know, I'm all about getting stuff done, always have been. And the voice is missing. I'm not going to pretend that I can talk on behalf of the care world. So we actually need to have the care providers in the room with us, telling us what is really going on and feeding in your issues so that we can feed them up to NHS, Public Health England, government, and
great. And you know what? I mean, I have to mute you a second, a bit crackly. We are all about co-production. We're figuring out what it even means, how we do it. But that is music really to my ears, because my question was like, okay, so what are you going to do to feed up? Your answer is, well, actually, I'm going to put you at the table and you can feed up and tell us what you need. That's the answer. Isn't that good? I didn't even tell you I was going to ask that question.
So what you need to understand is fundamentally what I am all about. Like I said, I'm there to be the voice for those who have no voice, but we're also here to empower the sector and communities to speak for themselves, because they can, you know, but sometimes just people are just head down and just slogging stuff out. People haven't got the luxury to come and read through all the papers that we have at cabinet and full council and write all sorts of statements and lobby and, you know, like, you know, the real bread and butter. You're all on the front line working as hard as you can. So people like us who are elected politicians are actually here to represent you and represent your voices in any way we can. So yeah, I think some people are really surprised even when they contact me and they actually get a response and they're like, oh, but you're deputy mayor. And I keep saying to everybody, I am a councillor first and foremost. I'm here. I was elected by the citizens, by residents of St. George. So I have to juggle at both being deputy mayor, cabinet member, and a councillor, but I'm councillor first and foremost, all day, every day.
I love that. I literally could talk to you for another hour. But
I know we've got to go and clap for the carers.
We have to go and clap. We've got a couple of minutes, and well, I have been asking people for questions. They haven't asked any questions. I think they are just loving. I'm going to put you on mute for a second. I think they're just loving hearing from you, and you're so inspirational. I feel like I'd love to have you back again at sometime in the future if you ever want to, if you ever have time.
I'm more than happy to do that. And what I will do, Sophie, is I'll send you an overview of everything that we've done in Bristol, and I'm quite happy for you to share it to people who are online. So it kind of gives you an idea of, you know, the amount of investment that we've put in so far, what we've done around PPE, what we're doing to help increase the number of carers coming into the field. I think we've already had 21 new people start as carers. Yeah, we're very proactive as an organisation.
Thank you. I've got someone who did ask a question, but I didn't see it. I'm so sorry. But we will have Councillor Deputy Mayor Asher Craig on again, I'm sure. Thank you so much.
Just send me the questions, and as I said, I'm quite happy to respond to them in writing, and then you can send it out to everybody. But thank you so much, Sophie, for inviting me. Yes, I could talk forever, but we haven't got forever.
Okay, then. Let's go out and clap then. Thank you so much. You're such an inspiration.
Take care, everyone.
Take care. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Bye.